Hello, my name is Juliet Velarde Batista, and I am a member of the Asian American Film Series that we have sponsored through the Asian American Affinity Group of the Santa Barbara Trust for Historical Preservation. This is our 12th annual Asian American Film Series, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about our group. Um, we are made up of local AAP community members who volunteer their time to help plan and organize events like these. One major goal is to educate the public about the history and the cultures of the Asian communities that once thrived in and around the Santa Barbara Presidio area in the late 1800s and early 1900s. This event is made possible by the George H. Griffith and Olive J. Griffith Charitable Foundation. Before we begin tonight's event, we want to acknowledge and honor the original habitats of our region. Let's take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds that we are collectively gathered upon and support the resilience and strengths of all the indigenous people have shown worldwide. We are on the traditional territory of the Chumash people. I would like to give you a little bit about the film. Um, so, well, first I would like to thank they have the opportunity to show this film, and that we will be able to chat with the producer of Harana, Fides Enriquez, and there will be a Q&A, will be monitored by Deborah, who is also another volunteer with the Asian American Affinity Group. Just want to let you know the Q&A will start around 7:55. So let me give you a little bit about the film itself. Harana is a film by Florante Aguilar, who went back to the Philippines to document this lost tradition of courting women, serenading them, and professing your love to them. So what I want to add is that this is a long tradition brought on probably in the colonial times of the Philippines, when serenading, which probably came from the Spaniards, was an important part of meeting women and partners in the times of marriage for men. So I want to tell you the very beginnings of this. The situation is that when a man would admire a woman, in particular, they would want to be noticed. So they would create these, what they call haranas, which is a combination of singing with music that is to let the person, one, know that they are being admired. So, and how they do this in the times of when houses were made with bamboo, they were above ground, and there would be a balcony or windows that would look over the property below, and the men would gather. The person who wanted to be admired would bring either his friends who sang and their guitars, and either they would sing for him or he would sing with them in order to attract this person's attention. When the woman would open the window, that was a sign to say that I hear you are here, and to acknowledge this person's presence. in that time, there would be a second set of songs that would be sung that would describe the admiration. And if the admiration was accepted, then this whole group of men and the suitor would be invited into the home. Okay, so there was always a party at that point. If that suitor was rejected, there was also songs to sing at the end to say goodbye and farewell. So Fidel and Florante went back to the Philippines to record and find the last of the Harana singers, and discovered these three men who then he documents in terms of all the music that hadn't been recorded, and the performances that they have and the stories that they tell about what it means to be a Harana singer. Okay, so I want to let you know that's the gist of the documentary, and Deborah will do the Q&A at the end, and you will see that the Q&A will begin around 7:55, and we will send you a link to the screening. I think you have that. And I know that the film will be 104 minutes long, and you could find the link on your Zoom chat box. And then, so we'll see you at 7:55.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Deborah Cristobal, also one of the committee members here at the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation, and it is my great pleasure to introduce my filmmaker friend, Fidesz Enriquez, and she is the producer of Harana, along with some other films that we will also be talking about later in the Q&A. Fidesz is super talented. She studied ethnographic dance, and she also traveled to the Philippines during the making of Harana. We're going to hear a little bit more background information on that and some of the scoop behind the making of this film. I first met Fidesz and her wonderful husband Florante at the Santa Barbara Film Festival in 2013, where they premiered their film, this film Harana, and it was such a delight that I had to go meet them. And so we actually did have this film here at the Trust a few years ago, and we are bringing it back because it was such a favorite. And so we're very excited that you all have had a chance to see it if you didn't get a chance the first time. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump into the Q&A so that we will have a good amount of time to really discuss more about the making and the behind the scenes of Harana. And so welcome, Fidesz. It's so great to see you.
Hi, thank you for having me, and thank you to you and to the Trust for bringing Harana back. So
Absolutely.
exciting.
Yes, it is our pleasure. We're very excited to have you back. And so I wanted to ask you, what was the impetus for the making of Harana? What exactly prompted? I know it was Florante's baby. So how did that come about?
Yes, so Harana is Florante's brainchild. He was touring his first or second album, his guitar music, solo guitar music, and he was in Montreal, I believe. And the idea was sparked around that time. He was also talking to a friend of ours, Edwin Lozada, here in San Francisco. And the idea of documenting a search for these Haranistas came about back then. And this was around 2006. Okay. I didn't know Florante then. I met him about a couple of years later, and we started dating, and he told me about this documentary project, And my background, as you said, is I do a little bit of ethnographic filmmaking, or at least that's my interest, looking for and documenting sort of a vanishing cultural traditions in the Philippines.
Right.
And I'm Filipino, so my interest is cultures in the Philippines. So he and I would talk about his film, but I wasn't really interested in being part of the film or working on it because I was the new girlfriend and I just wanted to be the girlfriend.
Absolutely. Have fun and not be working, of course.
Yeah, I didn't want to work this project, you know, I just wanted to go out and have fun. But the more we talked about the film, the more I realized that he could probably use my help because he's never gone to the Philippines to look for folks that continue certain traditions. And that's something I've had experience with. So I said, oh, all right, I'll help you. And it just went from there. So it was Florante's idea in 2006 to look for these Haranistas. And then I helped him realize the dream that he had. And that included looking for a director and a crew to work with. And it went from there. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. And it's a good thing he had you too. And so let me ask you first, what the tradition of Harana actually is, because I know some people have different ideas about it, and it is a very formal tradition as much as people might think, oh, people just show up beneath a balcony, but there's an actual protocol that needs to be walked through, and the parents have to be asked, and all this kind of real formal back and forth with the girl's parents and things like that. So can you explain to our audience as far as the deeper formality in Harana?
Yeah, well, Harana is a courtship ritual. And as courtship rituals go, it has been around for centuries in the Philippines. Every cultural community in the Philippines has a sort of courtship.
Wow.
With Harana is a good example of a melding of two cultures. So you have what's already there, which is the courtship, which has been present, and then it got intermingled with the Spanish guitar and a Spanish form of or style of music. Now, pre-Spanish times, there are already many different kinds of forms of courtship, and being Tagalog from the Tagalog region, which is where I'm from, there are ways of approaching your someone you're interested in. So with Harana, as we know it today, is actually very different from the Harana from even before. During the high renaissance of Harana, so to speak, what would happen is when a gentleman is interested in meeting a woman, he doesn't just go up and introduce himself directly to the woman. The protocol is you introduce yourself to the parents first.
Okay.
And a lot of times people will meet each other because, for example, a certain town or village has a harvest. So there will be people from other villages coming to that town to work on the fields. So there will be an influx of people. And a lot of times they want to meet each other. And a Harana is a great way to introduce yourselves under the watchful eye of parents. So a gentleman would, first of all, let parents know ahead of time that he may be coming to perform a Harana one of these days. And then if he is not a good singer or good player, he would seek a master Haranista to sing on his behalf. And usually it's not really love at first sight. It's sometimes, or most of the time, it's just a way to get to meet someone. So when things fall into place and the parents know it's happening, and then the gentleman shows up with his Haranistas, and if they like the performance, they would welcome the gentleman and the Haranistas up to the house, which is a big deal. Like, I think the biggest deal is opening the windows. Like we heard in the movie, Mang Tino saying, "Oh, the window, the lights turned on, the windows open." That's the signal that everything is, is okay. And then once they're inside the house, that's when there's another set of songs that are sung, and it becomes like this big singing fest. And it's very formal, people behave in their best behavior. Sometimes hot tea is brought out, and the men will continue singing, and then sometimes the women of the house would sing back. So it becomes this back and forth, and they're usually specific songs that go with that. And then at the end of the little soiree, there will also be a set of songs where the gentlemen and the Haranistas would sort of take their leave and say goodnight and that kind of thing. But in the movies, in a lot of movies in Philippine cinema, especially in the 50s and the 60s, they always show this Harana as this big romantic thing, and men who are totally in love, that's how they profess their love. It's not always like that. It is sometimes, but it's also not always the case.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah. So that kind of gives us a really nice scoop about the background of Harana. And as far as your film, because it came out in 2012 or 13.
Yeah.
So what have you seen as far as what effect has this beautiful film had on audiences around the world that that have come under the spell of Harana and its romance and beautiful music?
Well, the response has been immensely positive. A lot of folks that watch it, you have people who know about what Harana is or have personally experienced it, and it's this overwhelming sense of gratitude when they tell us, "Thanks so much, you brought me back to my past, and I haven't heard these songs in a long time." And then you have folks who doesn't know about this at all, and they are just so surprised that such a thing even existed, and why didn't anybody tell them? But for the most part, it's very positive response. And one of the things I love about screenings, in-person screenings, is hearing the audience's response, which is, it's always such a heartwarming thing. And but with the shelter in place happening and the pandemic happening, we actually, Florante and I decided to put the film on YouTube last year, in March, when the pandemic first became a thing. I mean, a thing that really affected all of us, and everyone was at home, and no one was going to the movies or going out. And Florante and I decided, well, let's, do our little part and share this movie worldwide. So we put it on YouTube, and anyone could watch it. And we had it up there for over a year and a couple of months. And it was so wonderful to read people's reactions. They would text on the YouTube page, or we will get direct emails from folks. And it was just really wonderful some people would describe their Harana or how the story was told to them about their grandparents' experience. So it's really, I feel that the reaction to it has been just overwhelmingly wonderful. And you have folks saying, we should bring it back, which might be a little difficult to do now that people live in buildings and there's streets and roads and highways.
Oh gosh. Well, that's a wonderful thing that you guys did, to bring it to everybody, to give them a sense of comfort and belonging being at home. So I'm sure that it just was because it is such a heartwarming, very sentimental film. And I found myself crying because it's just, the words are so beautiful and romantic, similar to opera, but really very heartfelt, just especially with the style of the gentleman that you found,
totally. As I said, the Harana is a perfect example of when you have cultures combining, because you have this old Tagalog language. The Tagalog that the Haranistas are singing in, it's a very deep old Tagalog, and people today in the Philippines don't speak like that.
Right.
So, and then you have the Spanish guitar combined with it. So it's a really wonderful mix. Also, there's in different parts of the Philippines, there are different Haranas. So Mang Felipe, one of the Haranistas, he's actually Ilocano. So
Okay.
he sings Ilocano Haranas. And then there, of course, there has been folks that says, well, what about the Visayan Haranas, you know, down south? And we actually wanted to go there and record and, you know, look for Haranistas there, but the budget did not allow it.
Oh, darn it. Yeah. Yeah, right. So we have a question from the audience as far as how are the gentlemen today? And I know that only one is still surviving today. Is that Romeo?
Mang Romeo is still alive.
Okay.
At the end of the movie, there's the credits that Mang Tino and Mang Felipe passed away.
Yeah.
Not long after the movie was made. So we feel so fortunate that we were able to record and capture their story before
Absolutely.
they passed. Yeah.
Yes.
And to be able to also kind of help them experience this amazing journey that they would not have had otherwise. For example,
Exactly.
the big concerts in Manila, that was a product of the film being made. There was not going to be a concert until people heard about the documentary and about the Haranistas, and they wanted to hear them live. So this concert happened. And of course we said, oh, we gotta go and film that. So we went back and filmed it. And then Mang Felipe and Mang Romeo was able to come here to the United States and perform in Los Angeles for this big Filipino music festival. And that was such a big deal. That was so amazing to me as well. And unfortunately, Mang Tino couldn't make it because he was in the advanced stages of tuberculosis. So he couldn't come.
Oh, that is so sad. Yeah. And it was really interesting when Romeo gave his story as far as not, when he was younger, wanting to do a recording, and then his wife telling him, no, don't go. And then his own father telling him, oh, it's, you know, you're being selfish basically for following your dream. That broke my heart. I just thought, wow, the poor guy. But it was so neat because when you're that talented, you're going to be found anyway. So I thought that was really cool that you guys found him and he got to perform on stage and, you know, be a recording artist.
No, it's true. It is true. His last 2 minutes, right?
Exactly.
But he's still going strong. He's still in the Philippines in Cavite. I think he no longer fishes. His health doesn't allow him to go out in the open sea anymore. You know, he's too old.
Yeah.
So he said that he opened up a little store, a little sari store.
Oh, how cute. That's so sweet. Yeah, and we have a gentleman, Juan, who said, thank you for sharing this wonderful documentary. The music reminds me of Mexican and Latin American trio music.
That's true, because the style of Harana, as we know now, was part of that whole Manila Acapulco galleon trade. So not only products were going from one country, one continent to the others, but cultural traditions as well. For example, the music, the style, things like that. So for example, from Mexico, we got this habanera tempo. If Flo were here, he would tell us about what that tempo is.
Right.
It's actually a very specific tempo. It's habanera, but slowed down to a grinding halt. And it would, and that's something that came from Spain. I mean, not Spain necessarily, but Mexico.
Oh,
so Spain via Mexico to the Philippines. Meanwhile, from the Philippines, we have this way of making, I can't remember if it's sugarcane wine or palm wine.
Oh.
And it's the roots of how tequila was made. So, you know, we got this nice cross-cultural current going back and forth of ideas and traditions being shared.
Very cool. We have another audience comment, remembering my father's Ilocano Haranas, Salamat.
Yes, those Mang Felipe's, we could not believe our luck when we found Mang Felipe. And the story behind that is we were staying in a little inn in Vigan. It's a historic town in Ilocos. And we essentially asked like who do we know, who is a good Haranista around here? And someone gave us a tip. They said, oh, Mang Felipe, he's great. You guys gotta meet him. And so we said, great, where is he? Where can we find him? And the guy literally said, well, if you wait around in that corner long enough, he's gonna come back on his tricycle. So that moment where we filmed Florante meeting him, that was the exact moment.
Oh my gosh.
We waited right there.
Oh my gosh.
And for Mang Felipe to arrive, and we could not believe our luck, because Mang Felipe was actually a professional performer in the 1920s and 30s when zarzuelas, it's a theater form of music and dance and song in the Philippines that was very popular before the war and right after World War II, where you will have these sort of traveling musicians, and it's a troupe essentially. And he was one of them. And the song that he sang called Dardarepdep was actually written specifically for him by, oh gosh, I can't remember the composer's name, but Mang Felipe said that Mr. Peron, that's his last name, wrote that song for Mang Felipe to sing. Oh, wow. So it's kind of his signature song. And I have never heard a version that is so beautiful as sung by Mang Felipe. And in fact, if folks want to hear the music, one of the goals Florante had was not merely to document the search for these Haranistas, but he really wanted to record an actual Harana album. So at the end of the movie, if you've seen the credits, they're in a music recording studio, because the goal was not just to find these men, but also to record them. And so we were able to record the first Harana album in 60 years. And it's called Introducing the Harana Kings. So look that up on Google, Introducing the Harana Kings. You can find it too on our website, shameless plug here, haranathemovie.com. Of course. And you can get the music. And that is one thing that was really at the foremost in Florante's mind. He really wanted to be able to record them because they are just such rare artists who have never been discovered before.
Oh yeah, that was just such a rare treat. And speaking of accommodations, you as a producer, it's your job to make sure that the production runs smoothly and make sure that the talent, the actors, the musicians don't have to be stressing over all these little details. Where are we going to sleep tonight? What are we going to eat? You know, all this stuff. And as it turns out, you have a very famous relative who helped you in your quest to find accommodations and transportation at some point in your journey.
Yeah, so Harana was my first full-length documentary film. My other videos or films, I would film it myself. I was a one-woman crew. I carried all my equipment on around my neck. You know, it was all me, sound, camera, everything. And I would traipse through the mountain like a crazy woman. But this is the first time I had a big crew that I was responsible for. So we had about, you know, of course you have the cinematographer, the director, assistant director, there's Florante, and there's myself, and then all the other talent. So those first group, the key group, were Filipino Americans from here. Benito Bautista was our director. So he and the assistant director, Emma, Francisco, and Florante and I, and our cinematographer, Peggy Peralta, are all based in San Francisco Bay Area at that time. And so we had to bring everyone there. And then when we're in the Philippines, we need to find other crew to essentially travel with us. And it was a pretty big budget, considering I was not used to having a big group of people that I was responsible for.
Right.
So so happens that at that time my dad's cousin, so he's my uncle, was the mayor of Manila, Mayor Alfredo Lim. And I felt very intimidated by him because I knew who he was, but I've never really met him in person. And I felt a little strange to be coming up to him and sort of saying, hey, I'm your niece. You know, my dad, you guys grew up together.
Yeah.
He told me to look you up because I need some help. I'm making this movie. And I never talked so fast in my life, just trying to impress upon him why this movie is important and I need your help. Please help me in any way you can. Because I essentially have no money. I mean, we had a very small budget, you know,
Right. Of course.
we're independent filmmakers. So fortunately, my uncle knew what Harana is. He was from that generation.
Oh, great.
And he was very gracious and was able to help us in the capacity he could as mayor, of course. And he allowed us to shoot certain scenes in Manila without any problems. And also one of the big things was helping us get vehicles that we could then take up to the mountains in the north, and drivers, because I'm not gonna in the Philippines, crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So it was, you know, we paid for the gas and, you know, we compensated folks, but it was just such a great help to have that assistance, because without that, I don't know how we could have done it. And then, so that was in 2008, the first time we went back. We went to film the first half of the movie, and we thought we were done after that serenade of the young man.
Yeah.
But a few months later, when we're back in the United States, people heard about this project and they wanted the Haranistas to perform live on stage at the first International Philippine Guitar Festival, and the San Francisco Manila Sister City Committee was going, and they wanted to see this performance. So we had to go back to the Philippines, and that was 2010. To shoot that second half of the film. And so, you know, the story grew, and so we had to go back. And so again, I had to go beg my uncle, please help me. Can I ask for your help one more time? And so he was really gracious, you know, helping us get discounts and things like that. So I learned a lot as a producer to, you know, really keep your relatives close, because you never know.
Absolutely. Well, that is the, you know, and I'm sure he was thrilled to do it, because anybody who can say, oh, I was on a movie set, or I was part of the making of this film, you know, it's exciting because it's the star quality. Most people in their normal lives don't really have contact with filmmakers or actors or musicians, and, you know, of wide acclaim.
I think, to me, what was most important about this movie back then and today, I feel like it's the representation.
Absolutely.
And I was able to, I think, convey that to my uncle, and that's why he helped me, because I said to him, we're creating this film that highlights the invisible people, because no one would think twice about looking at a tricycle driver or the fisherman or the farmer. They're the invisibles, and no one pays attention to them. But if you just look a little bit, they're the gems, you know, of the culture. They're the ones. They're the keepers of these old ancient traditions. And this film is really about looking deeper for that which is about to vanish.
Absolutely.
That culture, that tradition that's about to vanish, and the people that hold that artistry. So I think that, if anything, I'm the one that was starstruck, because you know, meeting the Haranistas, like for example, that scene where Florante meets Mang Tino for the first time, and they're singing in the fields. That's actually real time. That was the first time we met him, and they sang out there in the fields, and it was phenomenal, because they've never played together before.
Oh wow.
And Florante just followed along, and I said to him,
oh my gosh,
he was going to sing that song. He said no. And I said, how do you know to play that song? He says, well, Harana sort of has a certain progression.
Okay.
that Florante could follow. And I think he was slightly familiar with the music. But
Okay.
again, Florante himself is
Wow.
an amazing,
He sure is.
gifted
Absolutely.
musician.
Sure.
So
Oh yeah.
he has a way of playing, of bringing out the magic in these songs, and the
Yes.
artists themselves would say
Absolutely.
to us, whoa, I've never heard that song played that way before. That sounds wonderful. Because like a
Absolutely.
lot of things that happen over time, these old songs become karaokeized, you know, they're
Yeah.
like
Yeah. They're kind of.
electronic with all the orchestration. And it sounds very awful
Yeah. I'm sure.
to
I'm
me
sure.
anyway. But Florante dissects it. He dissects the song back to its basic form
Right.
of just voice and guitar.
Yeah.
And by doing that, just brings out the
Yeah.
music and the beauty
He's
of it.
like, he's very intuitive, and he seemed also very intuitive with the Haranistas. They didn't seem you know, ill at ease or anything, you know, even though they didn't know him, because he's so gentle and so so gifted with his music that it just kind of was very natural. The interaction was very natural. And speaking of interactions, one of the audience members loved how the young ones interacted with the Haranas and or the Haranistas, and they hope that they will continue the appreciation for another generation, which hopefully your film would help with that, you know, showing the younger people this tradition that they might not have known about.
Well, definitely one of the comments we often get when we had this, when we put it on YouTube, was how folks, a lot of people are saying, you know, we hope the younger generation picks it up. But we don't know. I mean, we'll see. Definitely, there's always these resurgences, but it remains to be seen. It might just be that this is it for Harana, and the
Oh,
movie is the last of it.
oh gosh, I hope
For
not.
example, the children of
Mhm.
the Haranistas
Right.
don't really perform the Haranas
Oh, that's so sad.
because there's no, it's a dying tradition. There's no need for it or no place for it. So it's
Oh,
one of those traditions that I think over time, I mean, it's just maybe this generation or the next. That's it.
maybe the next generation, you know how people are into retro and stuff, maybe, you know, some younger kids in the
Right.
future would go, hey, that's pretty cool, let's dig that up and let's, you know, let's reactivate it or something, you know. And also as far as your, you know, your producing duties and things that you know, because you've been doing this for a long time, because you know this film was made over 10 years ago. And what do you think you've learned over the years of being a producer, and how has that affected the way you work now?
Well, it's back then it was ride or die.
Wow.
That was my approach. Like, we gotta do this or else, you know, or else I don't know what's gonna happen. You know, the world will explode. But Harana was such a big project, and it really consumed us. Actually, personally, Florante and I, it was all we could think about because it was such a huge project. But over time, I've learned to kind of just relax. And the
Right.
interesting thing is, with the pandemic, I was actually able to start work on 3 documentaries. And I don't
Fantastic.
even have to go to the Philippines. So I have 3 documentaries in the works. One of them is about another tradition that is slowly dying, and that's about the salt making. I'm partnering with someone on the salt making. And the other thing that was really interesting that I learned about being a producer is I don't have to be there necessarily
Right.
in the Philippines, but I can do this remotely. Like a lot of folks that learn how to pivot and do things remotely.
Yeah.
What was important though is I have to have trust in the
Yes.
crew that I work
Absolutely.
with. That's absolutely important because
Right.
then I can trust that they will shoot what's important, and then you know when they show me what they have, I give my feedback. So there's a lot of back and forth, and that's
Right.
one thing that I love about making Harana as well, is the collaborative effort. So I guess the lesson is no one can make a film by themselves. It's always
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and your film Ilicondia was shown at the Asian American Pacific Film Fest this past summer, spring.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was so beautifully done. And I was shocked, absolutely shocked to hear that you had a film crew over there and you weren't even there to oversee them, which was amazing. It was just so beautifully done. And I'm hoping we can bring that to our audience in the
Oh, yeah,
future.
for sure.
Yeah, and the trailer of your Salt film looks amazing, and I can't wait to hear about all the other, because I'm sure there'll be lots more in the future. And it's just fascinating hearing the filmmaking process, how you guys put this beautiful film together and what you're doing now with your remote crew and everything. And I just want to thank you so much, Fidesz, for coming and sharing your time and your knowledge with us. We've just had such a fun time. It's been a delight. So thank you. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. Thanks for having us. And again, thank you to the Trust for bringing Harana back. I want to apologize ahead of time for the confusion about the Vimeo links. So I just wanted to let the folks know that that link is special for this festival, for this screening, and it's live for the next 24 hours.
Okay.
And viewers can download it and own the movie. So it's
that
yours.
is fantastic.
My gift to you. So you and your viewers can own the film. And I think there was a Facebook live page somewhere, and I was like, what is that page?
Yeah.
And I took a look, and it was not a sanctioned page. I don't know who put that. But anyway, I'm glad, it's a great form of compliment when people are putting your stuff out for you.
Yeah.
But, this link is something that folks, when you go to the link after, so you have to make your your profile on Vimeo.
Right.
You put your name, your email, and your own password. And when you go to the link and click on buy, it'll tell you don't have to pay anything. And you can download it, and now you can watch it anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fidesz. We will love, I've got to get on that and get that into my little.
And it's good for 24 hours. So it's going to
go away. It's going to expire. So we got to hurry up and download this and own it, which will be a real treasure in our little film library. So thank you again, Fidesz. This is awesome. And I can't wait till we can meet again in person. So
thank you for having me.
All right, Fidesz. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody.